What's going on, guys? I'm going to be predicting every single NFL score in Week 7. Currently, our record on the season is 54-39. Alright, now the first game we're predicting is going to be the London game with the Patriots against the Jaguars. This is going to be a bit of a tough game for both teams. They kind of need this win to sort of build momentum if they want any shot at the playoffs. Now, the Jaguars coming into this season were hoping to be a playoff team, so they probably are trying to win this game, obviously. The Patriots, just starting Drake May, maybe he's a good answer to maybe make a final playoff push. I know it's a little bit late for that based on these two teams' record, but obviously both teams are still assuming that that is still a possibility. Some key matchups here is that the Jaguars' secondary has been terrible. Their corners are really bad. So if they can, the Patriots can get their guys open. Drake May, I believe, is a good enough quarterback to make enough plays for him to win this game, which is sort of what I see happening in this game. I have the score being 23-17 in the favor of the Patriots. I think overall, the Patriots throw a bit early and sort of get a lead, and then just have Rhamondre Stevenson carry the ball and carry them to victory. For the Jaguars, I just don't trust Trevor Lawrence, and that run game's been a bit spotty recently, especially last week. It looks like D'Ernest Johnson's kind of starting to get some work, along with Bigsby and ETN, so that's a really crowded backfield. It's hard to know who's going to come out on top. I believe Tank Bigsby's been the best runner this season, so I could see that continuing to happen. And I think Brian Thomas is going to have a huge day against these DBs unless they keep Christian Gonzalez in man coverage basically the whole game shadowing Brian Thomas. I think there's no way Thomas doesn't make at least one or two big plays this game. Next up, we got Seahawks versus Falcons. This is one most people are split on, although I think the Falcons are one of the best teams in the NFL, so I don't see why this is anywhere close. I predicted every single Seahawks game so far completely correctly, including them starting 3-0, and then sort of losing all the last of their games. Looking at this, Geno Smith is leading the league in passing yards. It's because a lot of times they're starting to play from behind. They aren't able to establish the lead in the beginning. And Kenneth Walker hasn't been that efficient this season from a yards per carry basis, but this week I can see him bouncing back a bit against a bit of a soft defense for the Falcons. However, I don't think this offense, outside of DK Metcalf, especially with Geno Smith holding them back a little bit, is going to be able to put up enough points to stop the Falcons, who have one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL. Now for the Falcons, I really like Tyler Allgeier in this matchup. I think he profiles more against this Seahawks defensive line. I think he'll have a bit of a better day than Bijan, and they'll figure that out and sort of give Tyler Allgeier the workload this week. I don't see this continuing. I just think this one matchup is better for Allgeier than Bijan, just based on the personnel that the Seahawks have on the interior. This is the most lopsided matchup this week by percentage picked wise. I believe 99% of people are predicting the Titans. So I don't see any way the Titans can win this. I think Will Levis is just terrible. Last week he showed he could pass for no yards, as well as being inefficient. So obviously being a game manager doesn't suit him either. He's just not a good quarterback. I'd put in Mason Rudolph if you want any chance at making any playoff push. Sneaky player for the Titans actually has been Tony Pollard. I haven't realized, but he's actually had a really good year rushing the football. But I see in this game they tried that game manager approach that they tried last week again, and it just ends up making Will Levis look bad again, and he makes another stupid decision. I think Tajay Spears can lead the team in receiving, because I think they need to get him more involved in the receiving game. I mean, you look at last season, he had a bunch of receiving yards, really looking like an elite complement to Derrick Henry, and that's sort of just not happened this season. I don't know why they haven't gotten him more involved. On the Bills side of things, I don't think they're going to be throwing the ball too much, especially for their standards, where they're normally like an air raid team. Josh Allen could be efficient. He can tear up the secondary, which is actually a lot weaker than we expected with L'Jarius Sneed not looking that good so far. And it's hard to know what running back will actually get the workload. Depending on how healthy James Cook is, you could see Ray Davis getting a lot more involved. But I think James Cook, he could have played last week, apparently, but they didn't play him probably because it's the Jets, even though it was a close game. You didn't expect that. So I think James Cook is going to get most of the workload, but Ray Davis will be very close behind. And even with the addition of Amari Cooper, I see no reason why Khalil Shakir will not continue to lead this team in receiving. He's been an amazing receiver this season, and Amari Cooper just barely got into the facility, so I think that the chemistry with Shakir will just be enough for him to lead at least this week. Next matchup is Bengals versus Browns. I don't think this one's going to be too close. The Bengals have shown a lot of promise, even in their losses. especially recently. Obviously, the beginning of the season was a huge disappointment. But Joe Burrow's been looking like an MVP candidate. The reason why he's not talked about is because obviously they have like 2 wins, so he can't really win when his team's not winning. Chase Brown's been a very efficient runner this season, so I think once they get out to a lead, they can lean on him. And the Browns' interior D line has not been that good. And Jamar Chase has been quietly maybe the second best receiver in the league this season, had a very good season. On the Browns side of things, their offense is horrible. Nick Chubb is coming back this week, so I see him getting a few carries, but I don't see why you'd feed him a lot after he's just barely coming off of a huge injury that's left him out for a whole season. So I think Jerome Ford will lead them there. Now, with the loss of Amari Cooper, someone's got to lead the team in receiving, and I have Cedric Tillman taking that step, which he has, I believe, 9 yards on the season. I just don't think any of their guys will be able to produce. I think that if the Bengals can have a plan to stop Jerry Jeudy, none of the other receivers have over 100 yards this season. That's how bad it is in Cleveland. So I think one of those guys is able to take a step forward, and I think it'll be Tillman this week. Probably the best game of the week, I got Texans, Packers. I got it 28-31. This is going to be such a close game. I do think when they're fully healthy. Next game I got the Texans versus the Packers. I think that it's going to be a very close game. This is probably the best game of the week. I got the Packers winning by just 3 points. When the Texans are fully healthy, I think they are the better team, but they're not. Nico Collins and Azeez Al-Shaair are 2 of their 3 or 4 best players on their team, and neither of them are going to be playing this week. And I think C.J. Stroud might struggle a little bit with these turnovers. The defense for the Packers has forced so many turnovers. They're leading the league. I think they have 17. Next best is 13, so they've just been cooking on defense. The Packers' run defense is not that good, though, so I think Mixon will be efficient. However, they'll be forced to throw the ball a lot because the Packers will be just one step ahead this whole game. For the Packers, Jordan Love has an efficient game. You look at Josh Jacobs this season, I think he's 5th in rushing yards or 3rd in rushing yards, something like that. But he has 1 touchdown this season. A lot of this has been called back, but also the red zone passing offense for the Packers has just been so much better. And with Kamari Lassiter out, I think Jayden Reed's going to have a huge day this week, and the Packers are going to be scheming up so much for him underneath and going deep down the field. He'll be able to have a huge game this week. Next game, I got the Dolphins and the Colts 13-9. This is going to be such a boring game. If there's any other games going on for you guys, make sure just don't watch this game. It's going to be really bad. I see Tyler Huntley struggling again. Achane just can't get anything going. They're stacking the box a lot, which is one of the reasons why Achane's been so unsuccessful with the departure of Tua. And I think Jonnu Smith is a sneaky player to lead this team in receiving yards. Tyreek Hill has had a lot of drops and has no chemistry with Huntley, who has just looked terrible throwing deep down the field. And Waddle, same thing, also hasn't looked that good this season. I had this game originally a lot more in the favor of the Colts, but with Anthony Richardson playing and Jonathan Taylor not, it's going to be hard to tell. Hard for this Colts team to score very many points. I see Tyler Goodson taking that backfield by storm this week. The Dolphins' defense, at least rushing-wise, has not been that good, so I expect Tyler Goodson to have a huge day, very efficient player. And I think Trey Sermon, he's just not that good of a football player, so I don't see any reason why he's going to be starting for much longer. Next up, I got another huge game. I got Lions versus Vikings. This is a huge game to decide NFC North, who wins the division, playoff seeding. It's one of the biggest games of the season to this point. I have it being 27-20 in favor of the Lions. Now, I know the Vikings are undefeated, but you look against the Jets. The Vikings' offense just didn't look that good. It's looking like the Vikings' defense has sort of been figured out by the NFL a little bit, so we'll have to see. But I have Jared Goff having a pretty good day, and he's been very good. Just the first few games I sort of watched, and I just thought they were very bad. But I've been watching a lot of quarterbacks lately because I'm making a quarterback ranking video. I think it's coming next week, so make sure you guys subscribe to check that out. I also think that David Montgomery is going to lead this team in rushing. You look at power backs, they've had a lot more success against the Vikings than elusive backs this season. So I think they'll sort of lean on Montgomery a lot more this week. And I think Jameson Williams is going to be able to get behind that defense. They don't have very many good corners. However, I think that as Amon-Ra is the number one, they should have a very good plan to stop him. and just try to like maybe double cover him or do something to stop him. I think that will open up Jameson Williams. For the Vikings, I think Sam Darnold will struggle. I think this is sort of where his season starts to fall off a little bit. And I don't think Aaron Jones, if he plays, he's not going to play that much. So I think Ty Chandler will have to carry the load, and he's just not that good of a running back. Justin Jefferson's going to have a huge day against this terrible Lions defense. The next matchup we got Eagles-Giants. I think this is a sneaky close matchup. I got 29-24. Jalen Hurts has been terrible this season, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in my opinion, from what I've watched. And this offense has been carried by Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown. You watch Hurts without A.J. Brown and with A.J. Brown, it's pretty clear the difference. He needs A.J. Brown. And I have A.J. Brown having 188 receiving yards this game. I think he's going to have a huge day. A.J. Brown against really bad secondaries and corners has just been the most dominant receiver in the league in my opinion. So if the Giants can't come up with a solution to stop him, he's just going to go nuclear, and I see that that's really the reason why they win this game. For the Giants, Daniel Jones has been kind of efficient, but just hasn't been able to make enough plays. He looks at Neighbors so much, and in some ways that's good, but in other ways it's not great. I think Tyrone Tracy has a huge game against his division rival, finally securing that backfield for himself. As I said before this season, I think he will be the back by midseason, and I still believe that, and it's looking like I'm right. Next up, we got Raiders versus Rams. I think the Rams are going to put this one away early. It's going to be 20-10. Aiden O'Connell looks horrendous, like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Madison's pretty much every week he's scored a touchdown. It's looked like when I've watched them. And no one else on their team can really score because their quarterback play has been so bad. Brock Bowers continues to dominate. The Rams linebacking core is really terrible, so I think he'll have a huge day, but no one else on that Raiders team is going to be any good. Stafford's super efficient this game against the soft secondary. He just doesn't have to throw the ball very much. And they start relying on Kyren Williams and Blake Corum to sort of end this game and chew clock at the end of the game. Next up, we got Panthers versus Commanders. You get one of the worst defenses in the league. You put it against one of the best scoring offenses in the league. It's just going to be a lot of points for the Commanders this week. And I see Dalton struggling a little bit this week. 1 touchdown, no picks, but a really bad completion percentage. They run a lot early, but then they start to fall behind. I see Deontay Johnson having a big game this week. You look at the Commanders' corners, they are horrendous. They always let the wide receiver one on the opposite team get a crap ton of yards, and I think that'll continue. But Jane Daniels is the reason why they win this game, being incredibly efficient, as always, kind of going back to his high completion percentage, low yardage they did early in the season. This is how they're going to win games this year. Another huge matchup this week. We got the Chiefs versus 49ers. I have the 49ers winning. I know they only have 3 wins this season versus the Chiefs 5. Chiefs haven't lost a game yet, but I think that changes here. They can't really lean on the run game without Pacheco, and now with the loss of Rice, they don't really have any receivers who can make plays. Mahomes was forced to sort of carry this offense, which what we've seen from Mahomes, you do not want that guy carrying your offense. He does not look good at all, and he struggles so much against this very talented 49ers defense. Brock Purdy, I've actually started to watch him. I think he's been amazing this season, like one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You watch him, he's sort of making so many more plays, a lot less of a game manager this season than he was in previous seasons. And he kind of reminds me of Mahomes a little bit. If you watch him run, he's always just fast enough, able to sort of evade in the pocket. That's one of the things I think Mahomes does really well. But I think Brock Purdy has sort of just been a lot of what people say Mahomes is, and even more efficient. I think Mason and Garendo sort of split the backfield this week, and they just end up running a lot, and the Chiefs do score a little bit in garbage time, which is why this game is so close. But most of the game, I think the 49ers are going to be running the ball. And George Kittle has been probably the best tight end in the league this season, so he has a huge day again. Next up, we got Sunday Night Football. Here's a sleeper one. I got the Jets winning this one. So you look at the Steelers, they just haven't been that good. Next up, I got the Jets taking down the Steelers. Most people are going with the Steelers here. It's Russell Wilson's first start. I think this is really dumb. They should have put him in at starting in a game they were pretty sure they'd win against a weak defense, so he can sort of get in rhythm. But he's playing the Jets defense, which has been really good this season, so I think they'll be able to shut him down, and the run game, which will be completely useless. For the Jets, I think Garrett Wilson surprises people and puts up more yards than Davante Adams. You have to know, Davante Adams has been in there for less than a week. I know his chemistry with Rodgers is not just going to go away from their time in Green Bay, but the Steelers are going to try to stop Adams. And Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers' chemistry these last 2 weeks have been so much better than the first few weeks. You look at the first few weeks, it looked terrible. Now it's looking pretty decent. And I just don't see a reason why Adams would get more involved than Garrett Wilson since he's been there for less than a week. He doesn't know all their plays, he doesn't know the whole playbook. There's just no reason why he'd get more involved than Garrett Wilson, at least this week. We got Ravens Buccaneers. I think this will be the highest scoring game of this week. You look at the Buccaneers, I think this is going to happen so much more than people think. The Buccaneers are just not very good. Next up, we got Ravens Buccaneers, and I think this will be the highest scoring game of this week by far. You look at the Buccaneers defense, it's been terrible. They allowed Spencer Rattler and that Saints offense to score so many points. You look at what they did against the Broncos, really just 3 points until garbage time. This Buccaneers defense is terrible. That's why I see them letting up 4 touchdowns to Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry's going to have a huge day. I think Bateman's the guy that shines this week. Zay Flowers was able to start with such a strong first half last week and then was really shut down, and I think that the Buccaneers can key in and sort of stop him, but I think Bateman's going to have a good day. One thing to monitor is the Buccaneers' split-headed backfield. It's looking like now by the 3-headed monster. I still think Bucky Irving's by far their best player on that roster, so I think he's going to get a lot of workload. And on Monday Night Football, this is a final matchup we're going to have this week. I got the Chargers taking down the Cardinals by 7 points. This is going to be a pretty close game, but it's just because the Chargers are very injured right now. Justin Herbert goes back to sort of being a game manager like he was at the beginning of the season. Obviously, in that Broncos game, he was very good, but except for that Broncos game, he's never had over 200 yards. I think Quentin Johnston's got to go off this week, and J.K. Dobbins continues his very efficient season against the Cardinals' run defense. That's just terrible. Kyler Murray continues to be efficient, keeping the ball safe, but it's just not enough to beat this Chargers team, and the Cardinals lose this week. Kyler Murray keeps the ball safe again, but it's not enough to beat this Chargers defense, which has been very good this season. James Conner struggles against the run defense, and Trey McBride does the best in the receiving game since Marvin Harrison Jr. probably going to be out this week, and even if he's not, I'm sure the Chargers will come up with some sort of solution. You see, Marvin Harrison Jr. has really only had one good game this season. It was against that Rams. I don't know why they couldn't stop him, but other than that, he's been sort of held in check. So I think the Chargers, if he plays, could do the same. That's all for today's video. Make sure you guys comment what you would do, what your predictions are. Make sure you comment before the game so we can see how right you guys are, how wrong I am, if you want to do that. I've been one of the better predictors on YouTube, so if you guys want to flip some of your picks for mine, that make total sense. And make sure you guys like this video and subscribe so you can check out my content. I'm going to be posting 2 to 3 times per week, so you guys want to make sure you guys check those out.